Hi, Henry from Tech Advisor, and today we have a comparison of two pretty flagship phones for 2019, the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus and the shinier S10 5G. Why is this one not Plus? Why has it got 5G? Why is it bigger? All of that is answered right now. So, you're here and you already know that there are more than two S10 phones, but we're going to compare these two because they are the most similar and the most expensive, and the inclusion of a 5G phone in the mix might be a little bit worrying. Should I buy this one? Should I buy this one? What's the price difference? Here's the answers. Start with the first one. The Galaxy S10 Plus is a 4G only phone, and it is the most expensive when compared to the Galaxy S10e and the Galaxy S10. It starts at £899 in the UK and $999 in the US. It is a premium phone in that case, and it's going to go toe-to-toe on operator shelves with iPhone XS. It's got the distinctive camera cutout, which you can see here, rather than a pop-up camera or a notch, which you might well prefer. I quite like it, and it means that it gets to show off Samsung's pretty great AMOLED displays. In comparison, the Galaxy S10 5G is for some reason not called the S10 Plus 5G. It's just the S10 5G, but it's bigger than the Plus. Got it? Great. This starts at £1,099 in the UK, so it's 300 quid more than the S10 Plus. And in the US, it's even more. It's $12.99 in the US. So you're going to pay a premium for this larger, shinier, better connected phone. So before we look at the specs, let's look at the, if any, design differences. And the main one that you have, aside from the size of the thing, is actually the sides. Sides, not size. So here you can see that the positioning of buttons is different. So if I hold them in line like that, the power button is a bit higher on the S10 Plus, and this one on the right, the S10 5G, the button is lowered down. And also, you hopefully will be able to see here that we have a flat, smooth construction on the S10 Plus, and then the design here, it comes out around the button and back. Hopefully you can catch that. Now, there's not an obvious reason why that might be. Perhaps it's because the back of the S10 5G is Gorilla Glass 6, not Gorilla Glass 5, like on this one. The front of both screens are number 5 though. It could well be because in order to achieve this design, Samsung has had to move around a lot of internal parts. So if you actually rip them both open, which I don't recommend, you would find a different layout of components on each phone. And that's because 5G phones like this one need a different layout of antenna in order to receive 5G. So it could be that. It could be to make sure that people notice that you've gone out and bought the expensive one. But to be honest, they're going to know that you've got the expensive one because look at that finish, it's great. We have the Prism Black version of the S10 Plus here. But take a look at that, what Samsung calls Crown Silver version. And okay, maybe they've taken a page out of Huawei's book with the gradient colors, but this is a really nice finish. Shows up a few fingerprints, but it's sort of a half gloss, half matte finish, which I quite like. So aside from that, what are the differences? The S10 Plus is a 6.4-inch AMOLED screen on the front. The S10 5G, a 6.7-inch screen. So look at that, you do get an even bigger phone, and weirdly, despite thinking myself that the S10 Plus is quite big, the S10 5G is even bigger. But because there's hardly any bezels on these phones, even with my tiny hands, you're going to find that they're actually weirdly manageable. The companies such as Samsung have found a few clever ways for people like me with small hands to get round holding these phones that are this big with one hand. One of them is one-handed mode, rather conveniently called. So there you go, tiny little screen there. And you won't want to use it all the time, but at least you can operate some things. And I can just about get the top of the screen there, but even in full mode, you can do things like swipe down to get your notifications from anywhere on the screen. So it's relatively easy to handle. Samsung OLEDs on their own phones are certainly my favorite calibrated OLED. And despite the 0.3-inch difference on these phones, you get the same resolution, which is 3040 by 1440, and they look great. So that's the outside of both phones. What about the internals? Well, it's region dependent, but that's where there are fewer similarities with the S10 Plus and the S10 5G. Samsung's done that thing that they've done for a while, where in Europe and Middle East, Africa, and even Latin America, you have the Samsung Exynos 9820. That's their most recent one. And that's just because Samsung wants to make their own chips and they want to power their own phones in territories where possible. But in the US and some parts of China, with these phones, you're going to have a Snapdragon 855. I'm in London, I've got the Exynos ones. The chips do perform about the same, but at least in my tests with the S10 Plus, just as a side note, the battery life has been better on the American Snapdragon versions. That's not to say it's got bad battery life. It's got 4100 milliamp hours, and then the slightly bigger S10 5G, yep, you go up by 400 to 4500 milliamp hours. So both phones are all-day phones, but the S10 5G does have better battery life. Speaking of battery life, both these phones have this crazy thing, which you've probably seen, called wireless power share, whereby your phone can charge other phones. It's fine. I wouldn't want to do it. It's going to make your phone run out of power while you charge the other one, but it's handy, particularly if you have your own accessories and you only want to carry one cable and they're both wireless power. You can charge something else off the back of that phone, which is cool. Before I get on to talk about the actual 5G and 4G differences between these phones, what about the other internals? So on the S10 Plus, that base price will get you 128 gig of storage, or you can bump that up for 512. But the good thing about the S10 Plus is it has expandable storage. So it's got a micro SD slot, unless you want to run dual SIM, in which case that's going to cover up the slot, but it's nice to have the option. And you can expand that up to 1 terabyte if you want to. There's also a ceramic version of the S10 Plus, which costs more, and you get more memory, but it costs loads more. It's a bit different on the S10 5G. As far as we can tell, and definitely on the one that we have here, is a single SIM phone. I've read that there are dual SIM ones, but I've yet to see them. And this also means that you do not have expandable storage on the S10 5G, which might irk some of you Android fanatics out there. Now, the version that I have here is a 256 gigabyte version, which is quite a lot of gig. You might not want to expand that, and you have the option to go up to 512 if you want as well, but then you're talking stratospheric prices for that 5G phone. So in terms of storage options, the S10 Plus is probably your better pick. So as well as those storage options, it's pretty simple when it comes to RAM. Both the S10 Plus and the S10 5G have 8 gig of RAM as standard, no matter which storage option you buy. The one thing to bear in mind is that the S10 Plus ceramic version, which we don't have here, is more expensive because it has more storage and 12 gigs of RAM, which is nuts, but also means that you're going to future-proof your phone a little bit as well. But for most of us, 8 gig is more than enough. In terms of security and biometrics, both these phones have in-display fingerprint sensors, which are all the rage in 2019. And I find the one on the S10 Plus and the S10 5G better than the optical sensors you might find on some other competitors. Although finding the right bit of the screen can be a challenge, but so I've missed it there. Because you have to press in a certain place of the screen, once your thumb is registered, it opens pretty quickly. And there you have it. Pretty quick. Let's just see that again on the S10 5G here. Once you've learned where it is on the screen, it's very, very quick to open. And it's good for biometrics, banking, that sort of thing. But both phones also come, as you can see, with a in-screen camera to use Face Unlock as well. It's just not as secure. One thing of the S10 Plus and the S10 5G which they cannot argue about is the software that is on board, because it's exactly the same. Android 9 Pie, as you'd expect from a modern Samsung phone, as we record at least. And you also have Samsung's One UI skin over the top, and I'm pleased to say it's much improved from their old versions. So you get, over both phones, all the advantages that you would have on any S10 phone, including my particular favourite, which is night mode, which these phones do not have on at the moment, but turn it on and it puts the entire system black, and that's particularly good when you have an OLED screen, because with fewer pixels lit up, it should improve your battery life. Okay, so let's talk about the networks for a minute. Do you need 5G? Well, at the time of recording, I would say no. 4G across the world, particularly in the US and the UK and other parts of the world as well, like you guys in India, we have got great 4G signal. And this phone, the S10 Plus, is going to be available on pretty much every single 4G operator in the world. If you're buying the S10 5G direct from an operator in America, you're paying $12.99 for a phone that's locked to either Verizon, T-Mobile or Sprint. There we go. And at the moment, it's unclear about AT&T. But in the UK, you have to go for either Vodafone or EE. So you are slightly locked down to certain operators, and also the advantage is not currently clear either, because coverage of 5G in all these countries is just minimal at the moment. I'm in central London right now, and I have to walk about a mile up the road to even get a smidge of 5G on this 5G phone. So at the moment, you might not want to do it, and you might want to bear in mind about where you live, because you might not even get it a year down the line. Side note, there's a Bixby button. Both phones have that assistant button on the side, but you can remap it. At the moment, mine is to a single press will open Bixby, the questionably useful assistant. you can remap that to be a double tap, but I actually found using these phones that I don't open it by accident too often anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Cameras. That's where things get quite interesting and slightly different on these two versions. Ooh, you can see here, you're going to need a cloth to wipe these off because the fingerprints do show. Camera-wise, on the back, so on the left here we have the S10 Plus, and we've got triple cameras, which is great to see from Samsung, but you've got a 12 megapixel main, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. This is great to see, and also as a sidebar, you also get those three cameras on the main S10. On the S10 5G, you get exactly the same three, 12, 12, and 16, and then you also get a third time of flight 3D camera. So what does that mean? It basically helps with depth or anything you need to measure distance for. So Samsung claims, although you do get portrait mode, which it calls live focus on the S10 Plus, it says it's going to be better on the S10 5G here, because when you go into live focus mode, that extra camera around the back there is better at judging how far away the pen pot is, and people, obviously, animals, whatever you want, and it's going to hopefully process that a little better than the S10 Plus. In practice, you're probably not going to notice. And then there's also an app, which at the moment is probably the only other practical application for the time of flight sensor, which is an app which allows you to measure things, a little bit like Apple did with its iPhone. Here we go. So I can measure for how long the edge of that book is. Oh, can I? But as you can see, this technology is fairly temperamental, but that is only possible. So that's an 11 centimeter gap there. But you can only do it with a time of flight sensor on this Samsung phone. So if you really want to have that, you've got to get the 5G. The cameras on these phones are exceptional though, and there are great options on both models, including for you Instagram fans out there. One of the first cameras I've seen on a phone, the built-in Instagram mode. So if I did want to send this picture of a pen pot straight from the stock camera app, take the picture, and then as long as you're signed into your Instagram, it takes you right there, and you can post straight away without having to go into the app, which can be pretty handy if you want to catch something on the fly. So around the front, and those cutouts aren't just to annoy you. If they do indeed annoy you, they have dual cameras in, and they are slightly different. So on the S10 Plus, you have a dual 10 and 8 megapixel lenses. The 8 is for depth sensing, so again, you can do portrait mode of your face, or as a group even to blur out the background. On the S10 5G, it's even longer, and that's because you probably can't see, but in certain lights you can. There is another time of flight sensor in there, another depth sensor in the middle, just to improve those shots. And it really shows that Samsung has gone all out with the S10 5G as probably the most, well, not probably, it is the most advanced smartphone that they have ever made. From a video point of view, these phones are also amazing. They have optical image stabilization on 2 of the lenses on the back. And interestingly, the S10 5G, because of the extra oomph on the inside, so Samsung claim, records by default at 4K. So some of the smarts they've got going on in there, you can actually just about notice a slightly better processing of 4K imagery, but the S10 Plus is more than capable of doing the same. And should you want to record video with your phone, both of these will be great for that. And how could I leave you without mentioning headphones? We still love wires, you love wires. Bluetooth is a bit annoying sometimes. And the S10 Plus and the S10 5G, look at that. Headphones both. You get headphones in the box, AKG, as you do normally with Samsung phones. But it's great to see that even on a $1,300 phone, you are getting a headphone jack, whereas some mid-range phones are starting to cut them out now. And that headphone jack, if you don't want to use it, pairs nicely with the dual speakers. So you get stereo speakers on the top and bottom for a pretty decent audio experience. I've reviewed both phones, and at this point, even though I love the finish of the S10 5G, and I like that it's a large phone that even I can handle with my tiny hands, I would still, with my money, buy the S10 Plus. You don't yet need to fork out for a 5G contract, and you probably don't want to buy a 5G phone to then just put a 4G SIM in it anyway. This phone is more than capable, the S10 Plus. It's better size, you've got expandable storage and waterproofing and all the things that you get on the S10 5G, just in a cheaper package. And as usual with Samsung phones, if you wait a couple of extra months down the line, the price is going to go down anyway, and you're going to get yourself a really good deal. Or you could wait for the Note 10.